Starscream! I hope you aren't planning on throwing me out into space. I'll haunt you worse than Galvatron did. Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here. We're taking a look at one of the classic Decepticon characters in the Generation 1 line. This is Starscream. Starscream first appeared in 1984 as one of the first Transformers available. He would also be available in 1985, and he would be the only one of the Seekers that would still be at retail in 1986. Finally leaving shelves in 1987. Now, of course, everybody knows that, or at least most longtime fans of the Transformers, knows that Starscream is, excuse me, the treacherous villain of the Decepticons, as he openly seeks to take control of the team. However, a lot of his schemes are usually half-baked, or he doesn't prepare for the sudden arrival of Megatron, who is quick to put Starscream back into his place. Of course, Starscream would get his opportunity during the events of the 1986 animated film, where Megatron, among many of the other critically wounded Decepticons, would be ejected into space so they could return to Cybertron. During that usurpation, Starscream was able to come out on top and declare himself king. Unfortunately for him, before he could fully get through his coronation, Megatron returned as Galvatron and vaporized him to nothingness. Starscream would later appear in Season 3 of the cartoon after the events of the movie as a ghost. His spark apparently is undestroyable, so he was able to possess some of the other bodies, namely that of Scourge. And enlisting the aid of Unicron, Starscream was able to work out a deal where if he would help Unicron merge with Cybertron, Unicron would give Starscream a new body. However, Starscream, being the treacherous jerk that he is, double-crossed Unicron, stating that he couldn't do it without his body. So when he was granted his body, he was quick to abandon Unicron. However, it didn't do Starscream much good, just due to the fact that a sudden explosion nearby sent him hurling into space. This concept of Starscream having a invincible spark would be further explored during the Prime Wars cartoon, where he would be killed off again during the first season of it, only for in the second season, his spirit would roam freely until it found itself pulled into the body of Trypticon, giving Starscream the near invincibility of a Titan-class Transformer. However, Trypticon Starscream would be defeated by Fortress Maximus, and Starscream's spirit would be free to roam again, as it showed at the end of the final season. Unfortunately, the story was not continued thereafter, so we don't know what fully became of Starscream's spirit. Now, of course, as imagined, since Starscream is a popular character in the toy line, he did get numerous toys released in the line. In 1989, Starscream would return in two forms. The most commonly known one is this, the Pretender form. Starscream would be given a Pretender body, and a much smaller robot toy. He would be released alongside Grimlock, Bumblebee, and Jazz as Pretender Classics. The lore shows that in the comic books, Ratchet was being forced by the Decepticons to bring Starscream back to life. And in the process, he also was able to rework the 3 Autobots mentioned earlier back to life as well as Pretenders. The More Than Meets the Eye guidebooks suggest that Starscream willingly underwent the process to gain more power. And as he has gained more power, he's also gained more in confidence, and has actually pulled off some more of his crazy schemes, leaving many of the Decepticons to believe that he actually might have a chance at usurping Megatron as leader. As I said, there was another version of this one, and it was released without the shell. Just this figure alone would be released exclusively at Kmart stores. The 3 Autobots would also get a similar treatment. It was basically just the same toy, just released only as the robot and whatever necessary accessories it needed. Their tech spec bios would also be altered to remove any references to the Pretender shell. As you can imagine, these figures that were Kmart versions are quite rare. However, you need the card backer or its associated tech spec to have any real claim. Otherwise, people will assume it is the more common Pretender. The toys themselves are nearly virtually identical. There aren't really that many differences, except on a couple of the Autobots. Then lastly, Starscream would come back with his version 3 mode as an Action Master. Starscream would be one of the deluxe figures that was slightly more expensive than the retail pegged figures, as he came with the Turbojet vehicle, one of the smaller vehicles. His Turbojet transforms into an air chariot, or you can have Starscream run around as a basic figure, holding the nose gun of the airplane as his weapon, but he can also carry the engine cover of the Turbojet as a shield. Now, of course, the toy of Starscream was reused constantly throughout the Generation 1 line, as the mold was reused to make all the other Seekers. Thundercracker, Skywarp, Dirge, Ramjet, and Thrust, the more commercially available ones, all share the same mold. Many of the other later characters would be based on this mold. Those would include characters like Sunstorm, Acid Storm, Ion Storm, and Nova Storm. Articulation on this figure is pretty pathetic. All we get is the arms can be rotated, but you gotta watch out for the wings, but the arms can be rotated at the shoulder all the way around. And that's it. That's all we got. So to make use of this moment here before we start stripping him for accessories and transforming him, thank you Larry for handing this over, we have his tech spec card. So we'll go over that real quick because there is some controversy regarding it. It is done up in purple to show that he is a Decepticon. It even says Decepticon above his picture. And this picture would be reminiscent of the one that would appear on the front of the box. I unfortunately do not have it. Ironically, I have the boxes for the other 2 versions, but not this one. It lists Starscream's function as Air Commander, and a quote associated with him is, "Conquest is made of the ashes of one's enemies." Seeks to replace Megatron as leader. Ruthless, cold-blooded, cruel. Considers himself the most sophisticated and handsome of Decepticons. Believes Decepticons should rely more on guile and speed rather than brute force to defeat the Autobots. Fastest flyer of the group, can reach Mach 2.8 with an altitude of 52 miles. Shoots cluster bombs and null rays, which disrupts flow of electricity. Very good at what he does, but sometimes overrates himself. That's definitely a thing of Starscream's. And it says here that he can fly at Mach 2.8, which puts him at well over 2 times the speed of sound. His later upgraded Pretender version could easily go at cruising speed at Mach 3, so Starscream did get significantly faster with his upgrade. Now we're going to come over here to his grid, and this is where the controversy lies, because he's got about average stats here, so it's led many to believe that the stats for the Seekers got switched. It gives his strength as 7, his intelligence is 7, his speed is 9, his endurance is 7, his rank is 5, his courage is 8, his firepower is 7, and his skill is 7. So there's a lot of misnomers on this one that don't match up with his bio. That was a common thing that did happen with a lot of the Transformers. I tend to believe that Skywarp stats are the ones for Starscream, Starscream's stats are for Thundercracker, and Thundercracker's stats are for Skywarp. But that's just a theory on my part. Here we have all of the loose accessories for Starscream, so you can see why collectors hate going after the original Seekers. There are just so many loose parts to go get for them. We'll start off here with probably his most prominent piece, his wings. So you can see the front and the back of the wings. And then, of course, we have his tail fins. Just like that. And then, of course, over here are the tail wings. So as you can see, the opposite side, they do have an open spot there near the back end, so you can't just buy one and swap them around. That would be nice. Starscream also has this, his front landing gear. This is the same piece for all 6 Seekers. This is about the only piece they share identical with each other, so that's one way you can try to save a little bit if you're buying up loose parts. They all share the same landing gear. And of course here are Starscream's hands. Starscream's hands are in the dark blue color. Skywarp has purple. Everybody else has black. Now, there is a variation, supposedly, on the hands. I haven't seen it for Starscream yet, but there is apparently a variation on the hands. It can have this clip style here on the back side of them, or it can be solid. From what I've read, this is the earlier version of the hands. Just so you know. And of course we've got 2 launchers. They're exactly the same. Like all the launchers for all of the Transformer toys, they have been neutered. So they do not fire at all. They do barely hold the weapons in. I've seen on the loose market there's been a lot of fans that glue the weapons in. And as a collector of these, I would say please don't do that. You're not making it any better. I mean, if you want one as a display piece, either put it in a curio case so the kids can't get at it, or buy a modern one. And then, of course, we have his 2 null ray guns. And then, lastly, 2 cluster bombs. Or at least that's what they say these are. They don't really look like cluster bombs to me, but whatever. I'm no expert on weapons. Okay, now that we got Starscream removed of all of his accessories, we can successfully transform him with no trouble. We're going to come back here behind his head and fold the nose cone up over his head. Then we'll separate that section, fold it to his back, and then do a bit of a rotation through the belly so it brings the cockpit up. We'll fold the head up with the nose so that gets attached. It's going to hang loose for a moment here because we're going to fold down the arms so they're at the side. Then they fold back at the shoulder and we'll connect into the body. Once you've done that, you can raise this up and it connects in. Not the best on my sample, but this was a used sample. Then we come down here to his feet and we will fold his feet up against his body. And that concludes the transformation. To finish it off, we're going to attach the tail fins. That is, if I can hold the tail fins. I have to get Larry to get his little buddies to be down here to help hold pieces up to me. Get tired of dropping them. And of course we can attach the tail wings onto the tail fins. Just like that. We'll come underneath here, just beneath Starscream's face is a hole for the landing gear. We're going to put that in. Take the wings go into these black protrusions here. We just fold them over to the side and plug the wings in. Just like that. And of course, to round it off, we need a launcher, and while you can put either of the weapons in, I'm going to put the bombs in. Just like that, and then underneath the wings, as you saw earlier, is a hole. You just plug those in. And then there you... Hey, the launcher actually worked. Missile didn't clear the bomb there, didn't clear the table, but hey, it worked. It shot about 5 inches. And there we have it. Starscream is in his alternate mode. He is a fighter jet, specifically made to resemble an F-15 Eagle, which at the time that the toy was made, it was one of the most advanced airplanes available for the military. That's probably part of the reason why many of them are still active to this day. Of course, as a toy airplane, you want it to swoosh, and Starscream does a fair job of that. Unfortunately, the looseness of the pieces make that difficult, because that tail fin just fell off again. Well, at least we were able to do that much. Now, of course, since Starscream has been around since 1984, that means he has reappeared numerous times throughout the toy line. Now, to cover each and every one of those toys would cover a video in unto itself, and thus I also don't have all of them. But we will show off a few of them that I do have in my collection. A lot of you have been wanting to see my whole collection. This will be a piecemeal way of doing it. Right here, off the bat, we have the Power of the Primes Starscream. This version was done up to be a combiner leader. It has a wicked-looking headpiece, as it gives Starscream not only a much bigger head, but a crown. Sort of trying to emulate the look he was going for in Transformers the movie. Unfortunately, they didn't make enough Decepticon guys to combine with Starscream on it, nor did his combined form get a name. So, kind of a wasted potential that Hasbro should have tried to run with a bit more. At least in my opinion. And then, of course, we have the Siege version of Starscream. It emulates a lot of the look from the Generation 1 cartoon and a lot of the classic toys. As you can probably see, a fair amount of resemblance to the original toy there. Since this was the version of Starscream while they were on Cybertron, he transforms instead into a Tetrad fighter. This mold would get reused countless times in the Siege line, as it would make both his 84 mates of Skywarp and Thundercracker, but it would also do a 3-pack of Acid Storm, Ion Storm, and Nova Storm, and Target would get an exclusive one called Red Wing. Of course, following up in the following year, we got the Earthrise version of Starscream, which was done up to more resemble the Generation 1 cartoon version. It's not a perfect adaptation, but it was definitely one that a lot of the fans did eagerly gobble up. We finally had something close to a cartoon-accurate Starscream. However, and controversially, we also got, around that time, the Studio 86 Starscream, which was labeled as Coronation Starscream. This was based on his appearance in the 1986 animated film, as we mentioned earlier, when he became the king of the Decepticons. This figure was rather controversial since it was basically the same as the Earthrise toy, just with additional accessories and a rather overinflated price. And since it was coming out hot on the heels while the Earthrise one was still on shelves, this one became something of a peg warmer for a while. No, not a peg warmer, a shelf warmer. Following up in the Kingdom and some of the Legacy lines, we got a Core Class version of Starscream. Like many of the other popular characters, he was given a miniaturized form that still keeps popping up on shelves. And if any of you are wondering, he's roughly almost the same size as the Pretender version. Gosh, how the mighty have fallen. And of course, the most recent version of Starscream was the remake of his Armada appearance in the Legacy Evolution line. Now, while this Starscream is not based at all on the other Starscream, he does carry over a lot of the same personality traits. So clearly, he is inspired by the original. So now we get down to my thoughts. What do I think of Starscream? Starscream is definitely your typical villain. And definitely one of the henchmen type characters that wants to move up in the ranks. While there's certainly nothing wrong with wanting to do that, Starscream's methods do leave a lot to be desired, as he is constantly getting himself into trouble. As a toy, this version is, out of all of them, the poorest, really, to say the least. The articulation is terrible, and there's no getting around that. The number of accessories is also a gripe that many collectors have, since finding a complete one is a chore, but do remember, fans, if you are looking for any of these toys, any of the Generation 1 toys, you can piece them out. There are several sites out there, and visit toy shows in your area. You can probably find a vendor that will have the loose parts, and you can probably afford buying one in pieces than buying one totally complete. Because totally complete, these guys will go for over $100. Many of these guys will go for over $100 easily. But you can probably get one slightly cheaper if you part him out. Just some friendly advice. But if this is a challenge that you would like to see completed, I say go for it and see what you can get for a Starscream. But if that's not your cup of tea, I would probably recommend going for one of the more modern ones to have a Starscream in your collection. At any rate, that's my review of the Generation 1 version of Starscream. I hope you all enjoyed it. Please do remember that if you love the content we feature on this channel, I would certainly appreciate a like, a share, and a comment, and please subscribe if you haven't done so already. This is Sparkster1701 saying I will catch you all later.